The release of Redfall has been an absolute disaster. Microsoft marketed as their next big game in Game Pass. And Microsoft has not had an exclusive game in so long, over a year, that the game was really hyped up. And when it launched and people actually played it, there was just mass disappointment from everyone. I mean, pretty much every review was negative. It really did not receive high scores. And so I actually wanted to put out a review of it myself because I've played it. And, I didn't purchase it at all. It's $70. I would not recommend paying for this game. I would not recommend paying $70 for it. I would not recommend buying it. But if you have Game Pass and you just want to try it out, then I would recommend that. Now, is it a good game? No. I can tell you right off the bat, this is not a good game. Does that mean I didn't enjoy it? No. I enjoyed it. Actually, I enjoyed it a lot. And I wanted to give my thoughts on it. I wanted to give all the positives of it, and then I want to get into the negatives of it. But from the time that I've spent with it, I have enjoyed it. Now, I haven't finished the game. There's 2 maps in the game. I've only done the first map. So I've done everything on the first map, all the side missions, all the main missions. I've done everything that first map has to offer. And I'm currently on the second one. And I kind of stopped playing. I haven't really got back into it. I'm not sure if I will get back into it. But from what I played, it was an enjoyable experience. And so I do want to start out with the positives of Redfall, from my perspective. First off, the atmosphere of the game. The atmosphere is really unnerving. I mean, everywhere you go, you're trying to find out the mystery of someone called the Hollow Man, which is one of the vampire gods, the scientist turned vampire. You're trying to find out who the Hollow Man is, what his backstory is, what is he doing, because he's essentially taken over the town. I mean, everywhere you go, you see TV screens of the Hollow Man, all these wires connected everywhere. You hear radio broadcasts of his voice. You hear his voice. You hear him calling your character's name out. It's really unnerving. It's a really tense atmosphere combined with the music and the sound effects. You hear the vampires growling and threatening you. You don't know when the vampires are going to come out at you. So just the overall atmosphere is really dark, and it really did kind of bring me into the game's world in that retrospect. The set pieces of the world are, really well detailed and fun to explore. They'll have set pieces as like you're exploring a defibrillated mansion with an exploded library with objects just floating. You'll fight a boss enemy on a lighthouse during a lightning storm. You'll investigate a radio station or a hardware store, or you'll try to rescue captured civilians from this abandoned boat, as well as find critical pieces of information in a boat just stranded in a dry wasteland. And there's the vampires put up this giant wave all around Redfall, and so you just see these static giant waves surrounding the island, and those actual set pieces are really neat. It's cool to explore that area, and Arcane has put little diary entries and little tidbits of lore throughout that you find and you read just to give some more lore into the game. And I enjoyed finding what happened in certain scenarios. For example, when you're exploring the lighthouse, you find a note saying that one of the survivors pushed a woman off a cliff, and you find that woman's dead body off the cliffside, and then you end up finding out that she turned into a vampire. You might explore, an abandoned house, and you're going through all the rooms, and you're finding there's blood everywhere, and you're finding these notes that this vampire did something to this family, and it's got some really cool mysteries to it. I can tell you that. Or like when you're in the graveyard, you find a man with his head blown out, and you can pick up a gun right next to him. So he essentially committed suicide in the graveyard. Like in the ship you mentioned, you find out that the captain, abandoned his crew and basically sacrificed his crew. There's a lot of neat story bits to this game that I enjoyed playing, and that's what kept me playing. Along with the overall gunplay is fun. The guns are nice to use, although they can be a little clunky to use. There's some cool weapons, specifically the vampire weapons. You have a UV light gun, which can freeze and turn the vampires into stone. You also have a stake launcher, which is kind of like a rocket launcher, but it just launches stake into vampires, can pretty much one-shot them. It is fun to kill the vampires because you do have to, stake them in the heart, when you get their health down all the way down to, to zero or really low. There are some unique vampires in this game. They're the blood bags that just explode on you. There's these ultra powerful vampires that pretty much, suck the life out of you. These big hulking ones that just charge at you when the vampire gods are mad at you. There is some unique enemies to this game. They have these things called vampire nests, where you're essentially going into the vampire's lair, and the world is just topsy-turvy, and you find landmarks from Redfall just deformed and messed up, and you're going in there and pretty much blowing up the heart of the vampire nest and kind of stopping the vampires from taking over. So fighting the vampires can be fun, and fighting the other enemies can also be fun. The weapons are nothing special. You have your assault rifle, your shotgun, but there is a little bit of looting in this game. You do loot to find better weapons, rarer weapons. The golden weapons have unique skins to them, and I did enjoy finding those. I enjoyed combing through areas and finding unique weapons, and like Borderlands, you go and find cool weapons like that. It's not as cool as Borderlands because the weapons aren't as varied. I only picked up a few golden weapons every then and now. For the most part, these are just the standard weapons, but they are satisfying to use. The sniper, satisfying to use. The map itself has you capturing historical landmarks and strongholds, and you can fast travel around the map, so that's a nice feature to have. Overall, I enjoyed going through the main story and completing the side missions and helping the civilians out while I was on this first map. Now I'm going to get into the negatives because there are a lot of negatives to this game. First off, the AI in this game is pretty terrible. The cultists or the little grunt enemies that you fight, pretty much the enemies that aren't the vampires, they're so dumb. They don't. I mean, sometimes they just literally stand there and you just shoot them. The AI is pretty bad in this game. The normal vampires, they'll pretty much just all do the same thing. They just lunge at you. But I mean, they can, if you go behind a car, I mean, they can pretty much just get stuck there. They can't go around the car, so you can just shoot them. Enemies will just get trapped in corners, and you just, take them down. The game does introduce some mechanics that don't really work too well. Like, there's a light stealth system. Like, early on in the game will tell you, oh, this is how you perform a takedown, or you can enter this area in different ways by using stealth. But the stealth really doesn't work that well. What I found to work pretty much in every single scenario was just charging guns a-blazing. Because the enemies are so stupid. I mean, if you're good, you can just quickly just take them out. In that aspect, it's a little disappointing. The characters, we were talking about the story and the story bits. There are some neat story bits to this game, like finding out the Hollow Man's mystery, the main mission of that. You'll destroy these things called Sin Eaters, which are basically vampire memories, and you can watch the memories of what happened to turn the vampire gods into vampires. So you find out the mystery of the Hollow Man, why he is the way he is. And there's some really cool story beats in that mission. But other than that, the actual missions, like some of the side missions, are literally just go find my glasses, go put this on the gravesite, and some only took like a few minutes. And see, there's not really that many missions to this game. And the characters themselves are just there's nothing to them. You have this fire station, which is basically your base, where you can stock up and you can take on missions. And there's some characters there, like a medic and a preacher, but they don't hardly ever say anything to you. There's no characterization to them at all. The cutscenes, there's no cutscenes at all. I mean, it's just static characters with some talking. The actual character you play as, there's not much backstory to them, except for like little pieces of lore that you find throughout the world. So the characters are not super interesting. The story is just not presented in a good way. There were some really interesting parts to it, don't get me wrong, but for the most part, it's just not presented in a good way that makes you actually care about these characters. And each character has a set of powers, but I hardly ever use the powers. They don't. The one I use, Layla, the powers just don't seem to really do much. They don't seem to work really well. I did use her ultimate power, which is she summons her vampire boyfriend. That did help me out some. But again, I mean, like the AI is so stupid that the use of powers just... It might be better in multiplayer because I played this game solo, so the powers might be more useful then. But otherwise, I hardly used them. Then, I talked about the good parts of the world, but there is parts of the world that just seem lifeless, that just seem empty. A lot of houses just have the doors barricaded, or you can't go in them at all. There's just parts of the map, there's just nothing interesting to it. Actually, the game itself just feels unfinished. You'll find like these ATV vehicles all around the map. You can't drive them. It's pretty obvious that they were trying to implement some kind of vehicle system and just they didn't do it. Because they're all around the map and there's absolutely no reason why they're there. I mean, you can blow them up. You can pretty much blow up any vehicle in this game, but there's just some that are just in the middle of nowhere and there's no enemies, so there's no point in blowing up. That's pretty much the main consensus. The main negative part of this game is just an unfinished, it's an unpolished game. From the AI being incredibly stupid to the gunplay being clunky. I mentioned the gunplay is fun, but can be really clunky. To the loot system isn't that satisfying. The story, a lot of the story, and missions are not, worth it. They're not presented well. Like the vampire nest, I thought it's cool to take down the vampire nest because that gets you some rare loot. But they just respawn, so there's no point to clearing them. I'm the kind of person that wants 100% stuff, and they just respawn, so I just stopped doing them after a while. It really feels like the developers did have some heart in this game, that they wanted to make this game good. But I read there was few resources. They didn't have a lot of staff members. Microsoft, never really stepped in to help them with this game. I read they were trying to make it a single player game and ended up having, being kind of forced to make it into a multiplayer live service game. But really, it fails in that aspect. The always online option is ridiculous. I mean, you can't pause it, and I played this game all single player, solo mode. I mean, you can't pause it, which is, and always being online is ridiculous because there's no matchmaking. There's no matchmaking to this game. It's not like Borderlands. So I didn't play it online with anyone. There's a lot of like skins and weapons and like character skins you can unlock, almost like they were trying to put monetization in this game and then just didn't do it. This game just feels like it was unfocused. It's unpolished. It's incomplete. They didn't know what the game wanted to be. And in the end, it doesn't succeed in any area. It doesn't succeed as a single player game. It doesn't succeed as a multiplayer game. It doesn't succeed as a live service game. It tries to be all these different things, and it just fails in every aspect. I didn't even talked about the graphics or the frame rate. You know, the fact that it's locked at 30 frames per second on Xbox Series S. Xbox Series X is absolutely ridiculous. The game looks like an Xbox 360 game. It almost plays like one, too, you know, with the way that the characters run and sprint and the gunplay, how the gunplay works. Like I said, I enjoyed the game. I put a lot of time into that first map, completing everything, but I don't really want to play it anymore. I'm kind of done with it, and it's disappointing because it really could have been so much more than it turned out to be. I don't know why it was released in this state, but the developers probably just did what they could with the resources that they had. They tried to do the best they could, and I'd really like to know more of the story behind this game because it's probably one of the biggest disappointments of this year as far as gaming goes. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much all I have to say. You know, thanks for listening or watching this review. I have not dropped a video in a long time. You know, I think my last video was about 4 months ago, and you know, I had made a New Year's resolution to put out a video every couple weeks, and of course, I didn't do that at all. But I appreciate y'all watching, and see you on the next one.